You guys don't need me to tell you that RAM is incredibly expensive right now. I mean, just look up 32 gigs of DDR5 memory if you've been out of PC building for a while. I'll wait. Yeah, you a little bit scared now? I'm very scared. But I want to answer one question in this video. What is one way PC gamers can save money on their next gaming PC build without sacrificing their GPU or CPU performance? And that may be cutting the amount of RAM you use in half. Is single channel memory worth it in this RAM apocalypse? We're gonna talk about that after a word from today's sponsor.
As a tech enthusiast and dare I say PC building expert, there's only one thing that fuels my carnal desire for destruction, and that's seeing someone with unactivated Windows. Luckily for you, today's video sponsor GVG Mall is here to help. GVG Mall is an online marketplace with game keys and Windows licenses for cheap. The best part is it's extremely easy. All you have to do is purchase a key using code TB20, then just copy and paste the key into Windows. And beyond just saving big on game keys or Windows 10 or 11 keys, you also get to avoid my wrath. Check out GVG Mall today and be sure to use code TB20 to save big on your purchase.
So in today's video, we're gonna do a test that a lot of tech YouTubers, especially myself, feel like is sacrilegious. Single channel memory in a gaming PC. But we're not only gonna test that, we're gonna be testing something that I have found recently. 16 gigs of DDR5 memory in 2 sticks that is actually significantly cheaper, I mean more than half cheaper, than buying a 32 gig kit of DDR5 memory. Is that still enough for PC gamers in 2025? Well, let's talk about what my testing methodology is gonna be, the test bench here, and what we're trying to achieve with this video. We're gonna be testing 3 RAM configurations in today's video. First, we're gonna be starting with a single 16 gig stick of DDR5 memory. And we're gonna be doing that by taking a 32 gig stick of the Silicon Power value memory and cutting it in half. Simple, right? Now, realistically, I wanted to test a single 32 gig stick of DDR5 memory, but just like everyone else, we were struggling to figure out what kind of RAM to keep in stock for PC builds, and single channel 32 gigs is not one of them that we're keeping in stock, and the price of those is absolutely outrageous. So for the sake of this video, I think the 16 gig single channel and dual channel is gonna be more applicable to budget PC gamers, especially with the test bench we have here. But maybe in the future, if I get my hand on a 32 gig stick of single channel memory, we'll do a follow-up video where we test that versus dual channel, because just like I mentioned, this is gonna be going on probably all throughout 2026. We definitely have some time. Now, to test dual channel 16 gigs, we actually have a kit of 16 gigs dual channel that is Samsung memory. It is the most basic memory you can find. Times are tough out here, ladies and gentlemen, but this is a Samsung kit that is 5600 megahertz DDR5. We'll be running this as our dual channel kit comparison versus the single 16 gig kit. Now, all of these RAM kits are slightly different in speeds. I think the Silicon Power kit is 6000 megahertz and this one is 5600 megahertz. We're just gonna default all of them to 4800 megahertz. We're gonna go really low to the very basic DDR5 standard just to keep things as comparable as possible. Now, it's not gonna be perfect because these are different RAM kits. They will perform slightly differently, but I think it'll get the idea across in the video. So don't take this entire video as a definitive answer. Just like every Toasty Bros video, there's a bit of variance with how we do our testing to make it more average gamer approved. So again, don't take this as gospel, but I think how we're setting this up will be good enough to present the comparison we're trying to show you guys. And then lastly, just for a sanity check, I'm gonna throw that other stick of Silicon Power memory back in with the other single 16 gig stick and give us the most expensive option, the dual channel 32 gigabytes, to see, is this just gonna run away with it and justify the extra $200-300 you will spend to get this over these configuration options? Well, we will do that inside our test bench I'm gonna tell you about right now. Now, before we dive into testing, I wanted to go over some current prices at the time of recording this video. I'm trying to record this intro as close to its release date as possible so this can stay as accurate as possible. It's currently November 30th, so take this information with that in mind. The best price I can find of 32 gigs DDR5 memory dual channel on Amazon with Prime shipping is around $300 gross. That is a G-Skill kit of memory, which isn't even that crazy, but it's $300, very expensive. Now, what I was able to find on Newegg, and it is just all white Teamgroup memory, it is dual channel 16 gigs of DDR5 memory at 6000 megahertz with a cast latency of CL38 for $129. Now, we're talking $300 to $129. $170 difference here is a really big difference. Will we see $170 more performance going with 32 gigs? Do you really need 32 gigs? We'll answer that in this video. And also, in terms of pricing, I did try to find a single stick of 16 gigs of DDR5 memory, which I think a lot of people are onto this method because it's around the same price as if you bought the dual channel kit from Teamgroup. But again, with me filming this video, if you're watching this later in 2026, it very well could be a totally different scenario where you can easily find single channel 16 gig sticks for a reasonable price. But right now I think the dual channel kit, no matter what happens in this video, seems to be the better option. So just keep that in mind, unless there is absolutely no difference between the two, but I don't see that happening. We'll see. We'll run the benchmarks to find out. And if you're looking for a single 32 gig stick, I found this really horrible eBay listing, which is just a very basic green stick of memory for $179 for a single 32 gig stick, which really isn't horrible, but you gotta be really desperate to get 32 gigs if you're gonna go down that rabbit hole. Now, the basic things you should know about our open air test bench is the CPU and GPU. What we have is a Ryzen 5 9600X and a 96EXT 16 gig. This right here on the normal market, I say normal market pre-RAM apocalypse, would probably be around a $900 to $1,000 PC build. But if we talk about pricing, which again, we'll dive into pricing here in just a second for the benchmarks, this build is more like $1,200 to $1,300 if you go with 32 gigs of DDR5 memory. That's not fun. I don't like that. But this open air test bench is a good way for us to really test a mid-range system with different RAM configurations to see, does it really matter for the average gamer building a PC around $1,000 to go with 16 gigs, or should they splurge for the 32? Well, I'm kind of scared to see what the answer is going to be. All right, I've done a lot of yapping. You all are probably wanting to know the benchmark numbers now, and I want to see, is this actually going to be worth it? Let's dive into benchmarks to find out. All right, guys, I ran a bunch of benchmarks, had some fun seeing what the difference is with these different RAM configurations, and we're here to decide, should you take out a second mortgage to get 32 gigs of DDR5 memory, or will you be okay going with 16 gigs dual or single channel? We're about to find out. Let's dive into the benchmarks. Now, first up, we ran 3D Mark Time Spy, a built-in benchmark tool, and with the single channel 16 gigs, we got a score of 14,657. When we go up to dual channel 16 gigs, the score improves a little bit at 14,797, while the dual channel 32 gigs also improved slightly as well to 14,811. Now, the difference between these three configurations is very small, and I think the reason being is the 3D Mark Time Spy benchmark has been around for a long time. As you guys can see throughout the benchmark, it doesn't eat up a ton of memory, so I think all these memory configurations would be fine for this level of game. It's really designed to push your GPU and CPU really hard, but again, it is a good showing so far that there isn't a major glaring issue between single and dual channel memory, and that 32 gigs isn't just running away with it. So this race might be tighter than we think. Next up, Call of Duty Black Ops 7 with the built-in benchmark tool, the greatest Call of Duty of all time. I'm totally kidding. This Call of Duty makes me want to cry. Single channel 16 gigs on 1080p balanced settings with no upscaling got an average of 220 FPS with a 1% low of 160. The dual channel 16 gigs got an average of 231 FPS with a 1% low of 175. And the dual channel 32 gigabytes got an average of 231 FPS with a 1% low of 172. So now we're starting to see a difference between single and dual channel when it comes to the 16 gigabyte kit. And now an 11 FPS average difference, I don't know if that's really worth it, but when we're talking about at the beginning of this video that trying to find a single 16 gig stick can be a little bit difficult at less than the cost of a dual channel kit of 16 gigs of DDR5, it really does show you might as well just go with the two sticks because you actually are getting more performance by doing so. And this is also showing if you're a Call of Duty gamer, you don't necessarily need dual channel 32 gigs of memory, so you can avoid taking out that second mortgage. You could just get 16 gigs of DDR5 right now, save yourself almost $200 on your PC build, and you'll be happy playing Call of Duty. But again, that doesn't factor in background tasks and things that you might be doing multitasking wise, which we will discuss towards the end of this video. But in terms of raw gaming, if you're just focused on gaming and nothing else is happening in the background, you can get away with 16 gigs in 2025 in Black Ops 7. Next up, CS2, 1080p low settings. On the single channel 16 gig stick, we got an average of 543.7 FPS, the 1% low of 184.7. The dual channel 16 gigs got an average of 674 FPS with a 1% low of 207. And the dual channel 32 gigabytes got an average of 685.7 with a 1% low of 214.1. Now here's where we see the biggest jump. Going from single channel to dual channel, we go all the way from 543 to 674. Now we're talking about 500 FPS versus 600 FPS in CS2 on a mid-range PC. I don't think you're all good enough to really benefit from that FPS jump, but again, it is important to show that getting 100 plus FPS improvement going dual channel in CS2 is something you need to be concerned about, because some games that I couldn't test in this video, again, there's only so many games I can test, may react the same way and give you way more FPS numbers going dual channel. But another sign here is showing that 32 gigs you are getting more FPS, but in games like CS2, it really doesn't matter, especially with how much money you're spending. I would definitely go with the dual channel 16 gigs here if CS2 was primarily my game and I was upgrading my PC or building a new rig and I was trying to just get super high FPS numbers. I would just say no to 32 gigs and go with the 16 gig route. Now I decided to throw in Assassin's Creed Shadows at 1440p because, hey, the graphics card we have here is good for 1440p, and I want to try a really demanding game to see if that made a difference at all in terms of how much RAM we're utilizing and if the single versus dual channel made a difference. And we ran this again at 1440p high settings, and with the single channel 16 gigs, we got an average of 62 FPS with a minimum of 37 and a max of 115. The dual channel kit of 16 gigs got an average of 62 FPS with a minimum of 49 and a max of 79. Minimums are slightly higher here, but the max is way lower. Very weird. And with the dual channel 32 gigabytes, we got an average of 62 FPS once again with a minimum of 49 and a max of 81. So at least in this built-in benchmark, going dual channel 16 gigs seems to be the best value option for a very demanding game like Assassin's Creed Shadows. This would fall in line with a bunch of other really demanding AAA titles coming to the market, but this is a good standardized benchmark tool to show you guys that, well, the averages are the same across the board, but the minimums where you might see some random drops because of some buffering, because of single channel memory, is definitely higher when you go with a 2-stick configuration, whether 16 or 32, but 16 is still looking a lot better right now, and as long as it stays around $129, I can't believe that's a good deal right now, but as long as it does, it really does look like the best deal on the market right now if you're trying to build a new PC with DDR5 memory. And lastly, I threw in Arc Raiders because how can you not? It's a really popular game, and a lot of people are building PCs to play this game with single channel 16 gigs at 1080p with FSR3 set to native on high settings with medium ray tracing. A lot of settings going on here. We got 100 to 105 FPS average. Same with the dual channel 16 gigs, about 100 to 105 FPS on average, while the dual channel 32 gigs maybe got slightly more FPS, but for the most part, there was like a 1 to 2 frame difference, maybe 5 at most between all of these configurations. Again, we're just running around in the practice range to keep things somewhat standardized. The actual game will be more demanding in certain scenarios when things are going really crazy, but just to keep things simple, it looks like all of these are very similar. So in conclusion, what is the best configuration to go with? In my opinion, if it stays around $129 to about $140 and you're not saving, I don't know, about 40 or 50 bucks going with a single channel 16 gig stick, I would just start building your PCs nowadays with 16 gigs of DDR5 memory and dual channel. Now, obviously, if you're building a high-end system, you're gonna have to splurge for 32 gigs because you're gonna be really holding back a high-end system compared to our mid-range system here, which seems to be doing just fine with 16 gigs of DDR5 in the games we tested. I can't test every game. There are gonna be some games that this may not be the case, and you should definitely look up benchmarks for your game and see what other players are saying about it if it's very RAM hungry and you feel like you might get limited if you go with 16 gigs. You also gotta factor in if you're the kind of person who has a bunch of stuff in the background. If you like to keep Discord, a bunch of Chrome tabs up and everything, you start to eat up that RAM, that performance will start going down. So realistically, you're gonna have to make sacrifices either way with the way this RAM economy is going right now. And I still think if you are able to deal with the fact that, hey, 16 gigs, less. And I still think, though, if you are willing to deal with the fact that 16 gigs might hold you back in some multitasking, you can't have a bunch of stuff open at once, but you really want to get into PC gaming, you could save almost $200 by doing this. I'd much rather you do that than you say, hey, I'm going to downgrade my CPU and GPU to get 32 gigs of DDR5, because that's going to yield you way less performance than if you just decided to opt for 16 gig for the immediate future. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, I can't benchmark every single game, but these are a good variety of games so you guys can get a general idea of what you're looking for, and I want to hear from you guys. If you're building a new gaming PC in 2025 and you have to go DDR5, you're committed to AM5, which I think a lot of you probably should still be doing. Going AM4 may not be the best long-term decision. Will you buy 16 gigs of DDR5 memory in single or dual channel, or are you just going to splurge for 32 gigs of DDR5 and spend 350 bucks? If you are, share some money with me. Yeah, let's do that. But if you guys want more content from the Toasty Bros, as always, check out our other 2 YouTube channels, Toasty DIY and Toasty Clips, and our twitch.tv/Toasty Bros, where we build gaming PCs every weekday morning, and you have a chance to win a gaming PC once a month if you're following over on Twitch, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Now, if you guys just want to buy a gaming PC that's already performance optimized and curated for your budget, go to PCBros.tech, our pre-built gaming PC company where you can buy a gaming PC today. Use code ToastyBros on checkout. You will save 3% of your next purchase. See you guys later. Goodbye.